The global climate talks, COP29, is on the verge of collapse after countries negotiating under the alliance of small island states and some developed countries groups walked out of the stalled talks on finance. The two groups cited lack of commitment from the developed world to address the pressing global climate challenges, particularly challenges in the developing world. The bone of contention is the $1.3 trillion that poor countries are demanding, a figure that rich countries have grossly scaled down to $300 billion. Will the poor countries take the deal? We now join Nation Media Group's sustainability editor Zainab Wandati live from Baku, Azerbaijan, to unpack this. Zainab, it's been a rather dramatic round of talks at the climate finance this year. Will Africa walk out too?
Well, Michelle, I am back in Nairobi. I left Baku and I'm back in Nairobi. And as Kenyans like to say, it is biting itself each other. That's the best way to describe the situation in Baku. Things are not going well, particularly for the developing world, the global south. This includes the African group. Remember, in previous broadcasts, we said the negotiations, countries do not engage in negotiations as individuals. They engage as part of blocks. So countries like those in Africa, they banned in the African group, they banned in the group of 77 plus China, and also in the LDC group. Now, so today, the COP itself was supposed to have ended yesterday. It did not. It overwent today. It was supposed to have also ended today. It has not. So the COP presidency has extended the timelines for closure, hoping to maybe pick it up tomorrow. And this is because today two groups walked out of the talks, and this was the Alliance for Small Island States, also called the LCs, and the LDC group, the least developed countries group, also walked out of the talks. Now, the COP structure is that there's so many agenda items being discussed at the same time. So the particular agenda that led to these countries walking out is the agenda on finance, because this was a big deal for the developing countries. This was a big deal for Africa, demanding $1.3 trillion. But in the draft text that we've seen, initial text did not have any number. There were like 30 pages, 35 pages, no numbers mentioned. However, in the text that came out yesterday and even today, the pages were much fewer. And then yesterday, the developed countries are offering $250 billion, which is far less than the $1.3 trillion that developing countries are asking for. And then today, the revised text is even shorter with about 8-9 pages, and it says $300 billion. So they've only increased it by $50 billion. So this has really upset people, and people are not happy about it. So the small island nations, as well as the LDC group, chose to walk out. Civil society groups, African civil society groups, are also appealing to Africa to walk out of those talks, because it's being considered a slap in the face to go from 1.3 trillion down to 300 billion. But there are other people within this African group who feel it's still too soon to walk out, and if anything, they should push this conversation to at least push for $500 billion. So what has happened today is that the COP president has concluded the talks on the agenda items that are already concluded, but these other key agenda items that there's yet to be any consensus on have not been concluded because they lacked a quorum. The COP rules say that you need at least 2/3 of the countries that are party to the Paris Agreement to be present in order for any decision to be adopted. And the COP is a multilateral process, which means it has to be by consensus. So when you have countries walking out, that creates a problem because you don't have the numbers that you need to conclude the conversation. So the bilaterals happening between the COP president and the groups, the individual groups, to try and convince them to be there. So we still don't know if there'll be another deal that will be brought to the table that will now bring people back to the table, particularly the groups that walked away. Africa has expressed its serious dissatisfaction with the text as it is, but in a multilateral process, there's no such thing as a perfect deal. So even COP29, whether it fails or not, it will not deliver a perfect deal where everyone is completely happy. So what they're looking for is at least a compromise that will make everyone equally unhappy, or equally, at least you have something as opposed to walking away with nothing. But as it is, it looks like this COP is headed for collapse, Michelle.
Right, Zainab Wandati there. What a climate